your dates with Jerry Goldsmith go back to the mid 60s, if not the early 1960s. I saw a movie on there called Seconds, which was another one that I really like as well, a few years before Planet of the Apes. But I guess, Emil, I'd like to ask your memories about those early days of working with Jerry, because you worked with him for 35 years at least, you know. Is there anything you might want to share with us about working with Jerry? You worked with everybody, but it seemed like these composers, we talked the other day last week, they knew you had some unusual instruments. And it seemed like many of them, I'm thinking of Lalo Schifrin and Henry Mancini, and they asked you about what have you got, what they wanted to know about your instruments. So maybe you could chat with us a bit about that process, and also with relationship to Jerry Goldsmith, those early scores working for him.
Well, for most of those years, my collecting was a revelation to me as well, because I was finding instruments, sounds that I never knew existed before. I mean, I'd go into the bush somewhere in some little village and find these farmers that were playing gamelan music and stuff. They never considered themselves musicians. They were farmers. Yet, in the course of a week, they'd get together many evenings and kind of jam on their instruments that they made. And music was kind of universal in a sense, where people lived their lives, but they had other outlets that they enjoyed together as a group and shared with their families and communities and stuff. I mean, music was and is an important part of culture. Their culture couldn't be without it, you know. And through the years, what I found is that our composers, I hear you just come back from a trip. What's new? And I finally got to the point where I'd say to myself, what's new? What did you do with the last thing you got? You played it out there by itself. Have you ever thought about mixing it with the strings? Or mixing it with the brass or woodwinds? What could happen with that? What sounds you could come up with that? I mean, there's a whole world with all these instruments that could be mixed and married to create forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I really mean this. I could be locked up in a prison if someone gave me a shaker. There's a world in there. There's so much to find and become familiar with the way you squeeze the shape. So many things that you could do with instruments. What's new? What's old? You know, I mean, I feel still, and it isn't only this country, it's the whole world. Percussion hasn't been tapped at all yet. What there is out there and what could be done with it. And the proof of that is a lot of composers have instruments in their home that they don't just look at that are hanging on the wall. They mess around with them. And especially if you're a film composer, I would think you pick something up and say, wow, that would really work in that scene I just saw. I mean, it would make you more inventive for yourself, whether it's for a score or not. I don't know how we got on that.
That's good though. I think now, I correct me or corroborate with me. Would Jerry have been a little bit of both of those things? Like he would say, "What's new?" But then also he reused effects and sounds in future films, or you tell us.
Yes, absolutely. Jerry, there's a lot of guys out there, but Jerry was definitely one of the guys that he knew how to mix and marry.
How to mix and marry. Yeah.
And those are the two M's I think a composer should really remember: mix and marry. Different pounding with bowing, a bow. With a bow, you could do so much with percussion, it's ridiculous.